Ford just dropped a bombshell, and the ripple effects are being felt across the entire automotive industry. Once hailed as the gold standard of American ingenuity, Ford is now facing challenges it hasn't seen in decades. Recalls, layoffs, and production shutdowns are dragging the company down. And now, Ford has made a jaw-dropping announcement that could either be the saving grace it desperately needs, or the final nail in the coffin. The question everyone is asking, could this be the end of Ford as we know it? Or is it the bold, calculated move that will redefine the automaker's future? Let's dive into the chaos, examine what led Ford to this crossroads, and uncover the shocking details behind their latest move. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll be looking at the car market and Ford in a completely new way. Ford's story is the stuff of legend. Back in the early 1900s, it wasn't just a car company, it was a symbol of progress and possibility. Henry Ford's assembly line revolutionized manufacturing, making cars accessible to the average American family. Models like the Model T didn't just roll off the line, they rolled into history books, setting a precedent for innovation. Then came the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a golden era when Ford gave the world the Mustang, an instant classic that redefined the muscle car segment. Ford became synonymous with power, performance, and that all-American grit. But somewhere along the way, the magic began to fade. It wasn't one catastrophic mistake, but rather a series of small but impactful errors. Outdated production methods couldn't keep pace with global competitors. Leadership became reactive rather than proactive, chasing trends instead of setting them. The automotive market evolved, but Ford struggled to evolve with it. Meanwhile, rivals like Tesla, Toyota, and even Hyundai surged ahead, bringing innovation and affordability to the table. They weren't just selling cars, they were selling an experience. And Ford, it found itself stuck in a loop of catching up, losing market share 1 year at a time. By the 2020s, cracks in Ford's armor were no longer hidden. The company that once represented the cutting edge of the automotive world was now fighting just to stay in the race. The consequences of Ford's struggles are glaringly obvious if you visit any of their dealerships today. Rows of unsold trucks and SUVs are parked like relics of a forgotten era. What was once the hottest inventory on the market, the F-150, the Bronco, and the Ranger, now sits idle, gathering dust. Let's put this into perspective. As of November 2024, over 5,000 unsold 2023 Ford trucks are sitting on dealership lots across the US. That may not sound like much at first glance, but when you realize that accounts for 2.5% of Ford's total truck inventory, it becomes a glaring problem. Even more alarming is the lack of newer models. Less than 1,000 2025 models are currently available for sale, leaving dealers in an awkward position. With lots overflowing with old stock and very little new inventory to entice buyers, dealerships are essentially gridlocked. Contrast this with competitors like Chevrolet and Ram. Chevrolet has successfully moved most of its inventory to newer 2025 models, while Ram has done a much better job clearing out older stock. Ford, on the other hand, seems to be stuck in a time warp with no clear strategy for how to dig itself out. The lack of space has become such an issue that some dealers have resorted to parking trucks and SUVs on grassy fields and in overflow lots just to make room. Imagine the frustration for dealerships who can't clear inventory fast enough to justify ordering new models. It's a logistical nightmare, and a financial one too. But the problems don't stop at inventory. Let's talk about Ford's pricing strategy, a move that may have sounded smart during the post-pandemic sales boom, but has since backfired spectacularly. Over the last few years, Ford has raised MSRPs across its entire lineup. Trucks like the F-150 and SUVs like the Expedition saw price increases that pushed them well beyond what most buyers could comfortably afford. Initially, this seemed like a winning strategy. Demand was high, interest rates were low, and customers were willing to pay premiums to get their hands on these vehicles. But times have changed. Interest rates are climbing, inflation is tightening household budgets, and car buyers are more cautious than ever. Now, those high MSRPs aren't just a deterrent, they're a deal breaker. Take the Ford Maverick, for instance. This compact truck was a runaway success when it first launched, offering affordability and versatility. But as prices have crept up, sales have slowed down. And then there's the Bronco. The once coveted off-road SUV is now struggling to find buyers, even with discounts as high as $7,000 on certain trims. What was once a symbol of Ford's comeback has now become a glaring example of its pricing missteps. What's even more baffling is Ford's decision to raise prices again for its 2025 models. With dealership lots already overflowing and customers hesitant to buy, this move has left many scratching their heads. Dealers are frustrated, customers feel alienated, and Ford risks driving away the loyal fan base that has kept it afloat for decades. Ford finds itself at a critical juncture. With inventory piling up, prices driving customers away, and dealers losing confidence, the company needs a game plan, and fast. But how does Ford's recent bombshell announcement factor into all this chaos? Stick around because the story is just getting started. Let's start with one of Ford's most controversial moves, its relentless price hikes. Over the past few years, Ford has been steadily increasing the MSRP of its vehicles, alienating both loyal customers and potential new buyers. At a time when inflation and rising interest rates are squeezing household budgets, this strategy feels out of touch. For instance, the Ford Maverick was initially a breath of fresh air in the compact truck market. Affordable, efficient, and versatile, it quickly became a favorite among budget-conscious buyers. But fast forward to today, and the Maverick's price tag has crept into territory that makes it far less attractive. What was once seen as a steal is now viewed as overpriced. The story is the same for the Bronco. When it first re-entered the market, it was a runaway success, with waiting lists stretching for months. But with prices climbing into the $60,000 and $70,000 range, even die-hard fans are thinking twice. Discounts of up to $7,000 haven't been enough to clear the excess inventory piling up on dealership lots. And then there's the F-150, the crown jewel of Ford's lineup. This iconic truck, once a symbol of value and durability, is now priced so high that some models flirt with the $80,000 mark. Even with discounts as steep as $10,000 on certain trims, buyers are hesitant, especially when they see comparable models from competitors priced more affordably. So, what's Ford's solution? In a baffling move, the company has announced plans to raise prices yet again for its 2025 models. For dealers, this feels like a slap in the face. They're already struggling to sell existing inventory, and higher prices are only going to make their jobs harder. It begs the question, does Ford truly understand its customers? The company's leadership seems to be betting on a demand rebound, but in today's economic climate, that gamble could prove costly. Ford's challenges extend far beyond pricing. The company's ambitious push into electric vehicles is another major pain point. On paper, the idea makes sense. The future of the automotive industry is electric, and Ford doesn't want to be left behind. But the execution? That's where things get tricky. Let's talk numbers. In the third quarter of 2024, Ford's EV division, Model E, posted a staggering $1.2 billion loss. And that's not even the full picture. For the first 9 months of the year, the division's total losses ballooned to $3.7 billion. When you break it down, Ford lost roughly $37,000 for every EV it sold. The F-150 Lightning, Ford's electric take on its legendary truck, encapsulates the problem. Initially hailed as a game changer, the Lightning has struggled to live up to the hype. With a starting price near $90,000, it's simply too expensive for most buyers. And while it was the best-selling electric truck in 2023, demand has cooled significantly. Dealerships are now overwhelmed with unsold Lightnings, to the point where many are refusing new shipments. Production has been halted until next year, leaving the workers who build these trucks in limbo. It's a stark reminder that even the best ideas can falter if the execution doesn't align with market realities. Adding to Ford's woes is the hyper-competitive pricing environment in the EV market. Companies like Tesla have slashed prices to maintain their market share, and newer players like Rivian are offering cutting-edge models that appeal to younger, tech-savvy buyers. Ford, meanwhile, is stuck in a precarious position. It wants to be seen as a leader in the EV space, but its high prices and financial losses make it hard to compete. The result? A vicious cycle where Ford has to lower prices to attract buyers, which then eats into its already thin profit margins. Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, has been candid about the challenges, describing the current landscape as a global price war. But acknowledging the problem is only half the battle. The question is, can Ford adapt quickly enough to stay competitive? Ford's pricing strategy and EV challenges highlight a deeper issue, a disconnect between leadership and the realities of the market. But how did Ford get here? And more importantly, what does the company's recent bombshell announcement mean for its future? Stick around, there's a lot more to uncover. Ford's overproduction crisis is a classic example of a company overcorrecting in response to a prior problem. During the pandemic, supply chain disruptions meant fewer vehicles on the market, which led to surging prices and demand. Ford, like many automakers, interpreted this as a signal to ramp up production once the bottleneck eased. But the landscape has shifted dramatically. Economic uncertainty, rising interest rates, and a more cautious consumer base mean that demand hasn't rebounded as Ford anticipated. As a result, dealerships are now swamped with unsold inventory, particularly 2023 and 2024 models. Let's take the Ford Maverick as an example. When it first hit the market, the compact truck was hailed as a game changer. Affordable, efficient, and perfectly sized for urban buyers, it flew off dealership lots. Fast forward to today, and Mavericks are sitting idle, gathering dust. The same can be said for the Bronco. Its re-release was one of Ford's most hyped launches in years, and the early sales figures backed up the buzz. But with MSRPs climbing into the $60,000 and $70,000 range, even die-hard fans are walking away. Dealerships now find themselves offering significant discounts, yet the rows of Broncos remain unbroken. This overproduction issue isn't just about physical space, though that's certainly a problem. Overflow lots and grassy fields across the country are now doubling as parking lots for unsold vehicles, a surreal sight that serves as a metaphor for Ford's current predicament. But the financial implications are even more severe. Every unsold vehicle represents sunk costs in materials, labor, and logistics. Worse, Ford is forced to slash prices to move this inventory, eating into its already strained profit margins. This vicious cycle of overproduction and underdemand isn't just unsustainable, it's a ticking time bomb. Ford's overproduction crisis isn't just a corporate problem, it's a deeply human one. Thousands of employees are bearing the brunt of these miscalculations, with layoffs hitting every corner of the company. Let's start with the factories. At the Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Dearborn, Michigan, more than 1,400 workers have been reassigned or offered retirement packages. Ford may not call these layoffs, but for the workers affected, the distinction is largely academic. Losing a job or being forced into early retirement is a seismic event, particularly for those who've spent years, even decades with the company. The situation is equally dire at the dealership level. AutoNation's recent decision to offload 5 Ford franchises is a stark indicator of just how precarious things have become. These weren't struggling small-time operations. AutoNation is one of the largest dealership groups in the country. If they're walking away from Ford, it's a red flag for the entire network. For the communities that rely on these dealerships, the fallout is devastating. Dealerships aren't just places to buy cars, they're economic anchors. They provide jobs, generate tax revenue, and serve as community hubs. When a dealership closes its doors, the ripple effects are felt by everyone, from the sales staff to the local diner that serves them lunch. And let's not forget the psychological toll. Workers who've dedicated their lives to Ford are now left questioning their future. What happens when your livelihood, your identity, is tied to a company that seems to be losing its way? As if pricing issues, overproduction, and layoffs weren't enough, Ford's quality control problems are compounding its challenges. Recalls have become so frequent that they're almost expected, but for consumers, there's nothing routine about buying a vehicle only to receive a recall notice weeks, or even days later. The F-150, Ford's flagship truck, has been at the center of many of these issues. One of the most alarming recalls involved the 10-speed automatic transmission, which could unexpectedly shift into first gear while driving. Imagine cruising at 60 miles per hour on the highway and suddenly lurching forward as if you've hit a wall. Then there's the issue of seatbelt pretensioners, which posed a fire risk during deployment. In some cases, these safety devices, designed to save lives, became hazards themselves. Add to this a litany of other problems, from faulty wiring to brake fluid leaks. And it's clear that Ford's reputation for reliability is taking a hit. These recalls aren't just PR nightmares, they're financial drainpipes. Every recall costs Ford money it can ill afford to lose right now. And the damage to consumer trust, that's harder to quantify but arguably even more costly. For a company like Ford, which once prided itself on its Built Ford Tough slogan, this is more than a branding issue. It's an existential one. If consumers no longer associate Ford with reliability, what's left to set it apart from the competition? Ford's supply chain struggles, layoffs, and recall problems problems are symptomatic of deeper issues within the company, but these challenges also set the stage for its bombshell announcement, which could either mark the beginning of a turnaround or seal its fate. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the next chapter in this saga promises to be a pivotal one. After months of speculation and rising tension, Ford has unveiled a sweeping new strategy designed to tackle its mounting challenges head-on. Dubbed the Ford Renaissance Plan, this bold approach marks a decisive pivot in the company's trajectory. The announcement is centered on three key pillars: affordability, innovation, and trust restoration. The first pillar, affordability, is perhaps the most groundbreaking. Ford has committed to introducing an entirely new line of vehicles specifically designed to cater to the middle market, an audience that has been left behind in recent years. While Ford has spent the last decade focusing on high-margin trucks and luxury-priced SUVs, this new strategy promises to reintroduce models that prioritize value without sacrificing quality. Think compact SUVs, sedans, and trucks with streamlined features at reasonable prices. A nod to the days when Ford vehicles were synonymous with accessibility. In addition to affordability, Ford is doubling down on innovation. The company plans to reimagine its electric vehicle (EV) strategy, which has been underwhelming thus far. At the center of this effort is the launch of a new battery technology that promises faster charging times, longer ranges, and lower production costs. Ford also plans to address one of the biggest consumer pain points: charging infrastructure. The company is partnering with major players to roll out a robust nationwide charging network, ensuring that Ford EV owners have access to convenient and reliable charging options. The third pillar, trust restoration, acknowledges the elephant in the room. Ford's reputation has taken a beating. From quality control issues to soaring prices, the company knows it has to win back the loyalty of its customers. As part of this effort, Ford has pledged to overhaul its customer service operations, streamline the recall process, and improve transparency at every level. But the most intriguing part of this announcement is the leadership shakeup. Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, has outlined this plan with conviction, signaling that the company is ready to adapt and evolve. However, there's a twist. Ford has brought in new leadership to oversee the execution of this plan. The addition of a new chief innovation officer with a proven track record in both EV development and affordability-focused production has added credibility to the plan. This announcement is a bold step, but as we'll see, it's one thing to announce a strategy and another to execute it successfully. The automotive world is buzzing. Ford's bombshell has sparked intense debates among analysts, competitors, and consumers alike. Industry analysts are cautiously optimistic. On one hand, the commitment to affordability and innovation is exactly what Ford needs to regain its footing. By addressing its two biggest weaknesses, pricing and EV competitiveness, Ford is signaling that it's serious about reclaiming market share. On the other hand, skepticism remains. After years of overpromising and underdelivering, can Ford really turn things around? Competitors are paying close attention. Rivals like Tesla, Toyota, and Stellantis are undoubtedly evaluating the implications of Ford's new direction. Tesla in particular is likely to feel the heat from Ford's renewed EV focus, especially if Ford can deliver on its promise of lower-cost electric vehicles. Toyota and Stellantis, meanwhile, may need to rethink their own strategies to stay competitive in the middle market segment. For consumers, the reaction has been mixed. Longtime Ford loyalists are encouraged by the emphasis on affordability and customer service. For many, this feels like a return to Ford's roots, the company that was built on the idea of making cars accessible to the masses. But skepticism abounds. After years of price hikes and quality issues, some consumers are taking a wait-and-see approach. Will Ford really deliver on these promises, or is this just another PR exercise? Dealerships, too, are breathing a cautious sigh of relief. With lots overflowing with unsold inventory, the focus on affordability and moving vehicles is a welcome shift. However, the relationship between Ford and its dealerships remains strained. Many dealers feel burned by years of unmanageable pricing strategies and unfulfilled promises. Ford will need to rebuild these relationships if it hopes to succeed. As bold as Ford's new strategy is, the challenges it faces cannot be overstated. Years of mismanagement and poor decision-making have left deep scars, and turning things around will be no small feat. First, let's talk affordability. Ford's commitment to lower prices is admirable, but achieving it will require a complete overhaul of its supply chain and production processes. Raw material costs are rising, labor disputes continue to loom, and the cost of implementing new technologies isn't cheap. Cutting costs without sacrificing quality will be a delicate balancing act. Next is the EV push. While Ford's plans for new battery technology and expanded charging infrastructure are promising, the competition in this space is fierce. Tesla has a massive head start, and even newer players like Rivian are making waves. Ford will need to act quickly and decisively to carve out a meaningful share of the EV market. And then there's the issue of consumer trust. Years of recalls and pricing controversies have left many buyers skeptical of Ford's promises. Rebuilding that trust will require consistent execution, transparent communication, and a willingness to put customers first, something Ford hasn't always done well. Finally, internal challenges cannot be ignored. The leadership shakeup is a step in the right direction, but cultural change within a company as large and entrenched as Ford takes time. The new leadership team will need to align thousands of employees, from factory workers to executives, around a shared vision. Ford's bombshell announcement is a pivotal moment in the company's history. It's a bold plan that aims to address the company's deepest issues while positioning it for future success. But as history has shown, even the best laid plans can falter if execution falls short. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Ford succeeds, it could not only reclaim its place as a leader in the automotive world, but also set a new standard for how legacy automakers can adapt to the challenges of the 21st century. If it fails, the consequences could be catastrophic. Not just for Ford, but for the broader industry. For now, the automotive world is watching closely. Ford has thrown down the gauntlet, and the next few years will determine whether this strategy is a turning point or just another chapter in the company's long history of struggles.